Chapter 3 is the highly hyped sequel to Poppy Playtime that's been in development for months. But where in the world is it? What happened to it? And is it coming soon? Like the video if you're excited, and as a reward, here's a picture of every person not subscribed. So essentially, as we know, Chapter 1 for the game was released all the way back on October 12th of 2021, about a year and a half ago. And then following this, a few months later on May 6th, we would get a much more fully fleshed Chapter 2 with hours of gameplay and tons of story to dig through that people still talk about today. But then there's Chapter 3. It's been in development for about a year, but yet it's still been in sort of a limbo on when it will come out and what the massive delay is. But basically, I think I know what's going on. Here's my theory. So if you didn't know, after the release and quite frankly the massive success of Chapter 1, the developers almost immediately began working on Chapter 2 as you'd expect. And in fact, just a few days after Chapter 1's release, we even got a teaser trailer showing us a basic idea on what to expect in the future, along with a subtle reveal of the Chapter 2 main antagonist, showing us that they already had the game planned out long before this and were probably developing the basics before Chapter 1 even released, which is all great. But for Chapter 3, this is when things start to get shaky. So the third chapter has been in development for about a year and is set to come out in 2023, assuming it doesn't get delayed, which I'll talk about in a few. But why is the game taking so long? Are they forgetting about it? Is the game actually taking over a year to develop? What's going on here? Well, if you don't remember, when Chapter 2 released and people started to absolutely dig through the files of the game looking for secrets and clues into the next chapter, it wouldn't take long for people to discover a new folder called Poppy Playtime Multiplayer, which upon opening would show us a little wall with Huggy and Mommy Longlegs as idle animations in some sort of early development. Now, people were quick to write this off as them testing ideas or working on the Dark Deception DLC they announced a little over a year ago now as well. However, this folder would be the foundation for what we now know as Project Playtime, which is an in-development multiplayer spin-off title to Poppy Playtime, of course, that you guys have probably already known about, which is the first reason why Chapter 3 hasn't released yet. They're working on an entirely different game. As for the next 8 to 12 months following Chapter 2's release and this folder's creation, they almost solely worked on an entirely separate game for its eventual early access release that was just this past December. And while we can't really be for sure with how small their team was at the time, I'd be surprised if they really got anything Chapter 3 related done at this point, outside of the one very vague teaser trailer and maybe some writing for what they'll want the game and characters to be about. They've emphasized before that the Chapter 3 character is probably going to be something new that they will eventually add into Project Playtime. However, for now, we don't really know much about the development cycle at all. But moving into 2023, it's also not really looking that great for Chapter 3's release, at least anytime soon. As if you didn't know, Project Playtime is actually only in early access, and is still in full development with a release window of sometime later in 2023, not even including the heaps of updates that will have to come along with it once it finally is done. Assuming, of course, that it finishes on time, which brings up the second issue with Chapter 3's release. The developers have consistently failed at reaching deadlines for all of their projects. Now, I want to start this by saying by no means am I upset inherently with all these delays. Time-wise, it was sort of inevitable when having a small indie studio work on two massive games all at once, and I'd rather have a good game than a rushed one. However, ever since Chapter 2, there have been almost 100% consistent problems with trying to get games and stuff out on time. It started off relatively small, with the second chapter only being delayed by a few hours. However, later in the year when Project Playtime's early access was released, they had tons of issues and had to delay it over a week from when it was announced, which was a massive holdup in its release and could suggest they are even falling more behind schedule. Plus, the worst one at all is, if you didn't know, Project Playtime runs on seasons, and Season 1 of the game was supposed to end about 1 month and 14 days ago from the release of this video. But once again, it got massively delayed and we have nothing to show for it outside of a couple updates that they most likely just threw in as compensation in the meantime, which is honestly telling me that while they are planning on releasing Chapter 3 in 2023, I also don't want to deny the very real possibility of it getting delayed even longer, because I mean, there's just a lot of evidence to suggest it would happen. And while I know all these delays are for the better of the game quality wise, and I more than understand that these things take probably more time than they're giving themselves, but regardless, it's been frustrating these past few releases to have everything always be delayed, and then when we do get release dates or windows for stuff like Chapter 3, I can't even really trust it anymore because they have a poor history of that stuff. Not to mention that they're also unsure about Project Playtime's release date, because sometimes the developers say it will be done in the first half of 2023, which ends here in just a couple months, so they gotta be getting close, while other times in other interviews they say mid-2023, suggesting it could be much later in the year. So who knows when that will even be done either. Plus, they've already shown some signs that Chapter 3 is going to take a bit longer than expected, prevalent in the analog horror tapes that they've been dropping on their channel, most likely being done to buy some time and get some money money for the production of Chapter 3. Now, these analog horde tapes are essentially Chapter 3 teasers that don't really reveal anything about Chapter 3, but are rather more focused on the lore elements, and they are done beautifully. They're by far some of my favorite parts of the entire franchise. However, I get a hunch that these were most likely not initially planned to be released by the devs, and were rather planned when they realized that they had a massive workload and needed to start getting content out to keep the community active and thriving, which I would say has worked incredibly well, as hype for Chapter 3 and Poppy Playtime in general has honestly just gone up within the past year. But they've also been dropping some other random stuff on the channel, such as most recently they released the safety maintenance video, which was from the ARG back in like November, so I don't really get why they did that, but it tells me that they're trying to stay consistent with content in an attempt to buy themselves more time as they try to finish up the stuff that they're still yet to complete, while also trying to prepare for the eventual release of Chapter 3, possibly through more teaser trailers or something like that, because I doubt we are even in the discussion of a gameplay trailer or something like that, at least until Project Playtime officially releases. Plus, it honestly seems like Mob Entertainment as a brand is still very much a developing company and is still branching out, trying to figure out tons of new things they want to work on, from different games and spin-offs like what we've just seen, movies like what was announced a long while back, and even TV shows that we've just been seeing teasers on for their website already. So there are tons of other things that developers have had on their plate that are most likely distracting them from working on their main title, Chapter 3, that, let's be honest, we were all hoping would be out by now. But I'm tired of being negative. Let's talk about some good stuff, because there's also a lot of positive things with the development of Chapter 3 as well, suggesting things are at least going well now. See, for starters, if you didn't know, when Chapter 2 first released and Project Playtime just started development, they basically had one small team that was working on all of this stuff. However, since then, the team has been expanding to dramatic levels. For example, their LinkedIn page is filled with job offers, probably to help develop and work on stuff like Chapter 3 so more people can focus on that. And also, while I only have archives from this year, we could see they started the year with between 11 to 50 employees, and now they are well into the hundreds, showing that they are expanding their team and fast. And probably within the next few months, they will, or maybe already do, have a dedicated team of people literally designed to only work on Chapter 3, so that massive delays like this in the future with Chapter 4, Chapter 5, however many chapters there are, doesn't happen again, and everything can start to be released in a somewhat timely manner. And also, if you're looking for an actual development update, the CEO of Mob Entertainment himself said that there's even more things that the community has not been made aware of still in development, even saying that Chapter 3 is also full steam ahead currently, telling us that finally the full-blown development of Chapter 3 as we speak is beginning to be worked on, and has been for the past couple months, meaning while we are still probably months away from its release, they have definitely made tons of progress towards the game's development, as now they are finally working on it with their full attention. Now, if I had to guess what happened here, it seems like honestly they got too overambitious after Chapter 2's release date and wanted to make other games and projects and all of that other stuff, which has led to all these delays and time management issues, with Project Playtime initially coming out feeling rushed and other deadlines failing to be met. However, it really seems like as of recently they've been finally sorting everything out, and Chapter 3 may actually be getting the full attention of the developers once again, as Project Playtime hopefully nears the end of its full development within the next few months, and Chapter 3 can finally take the main stage. Because let's be honest, Project Playtime is fun to play with friends every once in a while, but Poppy Playtime is the real game that people care about. That probably all won't be for a few months, assuming things go to plan, which who knows if they will, but for all those updates as soon as they happen, subscribe here, of course, and peace.